Hi, I'm Terese Marie Mailhot, and I'll be reading from Heartberries. My story was maltreated. The words were too wrong and ugly to speak. I tried to tell someone my story, but he thought it was a hustle. He marked it as solicitation. The man took me shopping with his pity. I was silenced by charity, like so many Indians. I kept my hand out. My story became the hustle. Women asked me what my endgame was. I hadn't thought about it. I considered marrying one of the men and sitting with my winnings, but I was too smart to sit. I took their money and went to school. I was hungry and took more. When I gained the faculty to speak my story, I realized I had given men too much. The thing about women from the river is that our currents are endless. We sometimes outrun ourselves. I stopped answering men's questions or their calls. Women asked me for my story. My grandmother told me about Jesus. We knelt to pray. She told me to close my eyes. It was the only thing she asked me to do properly. She had conviction, but she also taught me to be mindless. We started recipes and lost track. We forgot ingredients. Our cakes never rose. We started an applehead doll. The shrunken, carved head sat on a bookshelf years after she left. When she died, nobody noticed me. Indian girls can be forgotten so well, they forget themselves. My mother brought healers to our home, and I thought she was trying to exorcise me, a little ghost. Psychics came. Our house was still ruptured. I started to craft ideas. I wrapped myself in a Pendleton blanket and picked berries. I pretended I was ancient. A healer looked at me. He was tall and his jeans were dirty. He knelt down. I thought I was in trouble. So I told him that I had been good. He said, "You don't need to be nice." My mother said that was when I became trouble. And this is from Indian Sick. Casey, I want to be polite and present myself as decent. I know the math of regret and nostalgia. I regret leaving you, and I'm disappointed you let me go. I don't remember what I did. I know that I cried next to you, and I was wearing lingerie. You were angry with me for wanting to die. More than that, you were upset that I was weak-minded. I was dramatic and unhinged. I couldn't placate. I know that's what I should have done. I remember that I was wearing black lace and new stockings. I wasn't stable, but men usually don't care about that. I didn't perform. I found myself uncovered and vulnerable in fabric so thin I thought of everything I've belted against my flesh and unclasped again and again. You used me. I know you think animals are sentient. You treat your dog well. I needed to talk to you. The way we operate asks a lot from me before I can ask something of you. This letter can spiral out of control like me, and maybe you won't read it because I might fail to send it, or you might decide your life without me is worth maintaining. You have white sensibilities, and who can fault you for being practical? I'd like this letter to be ashamed and wild like me, and I'd like to know you read it and wanted me more. I told the staff this is my journal. I'm going to die an Indian death. I want to lay my neck on the cool steel alloy of the train tracks back home. I want the death of a res dog. Mutts can't keep away from the tracks. I'm writing you from a behavioral health service building. I agreed to commit myself under the condition they would let me write. You should have thought before you made a crazy Indian woman your lover, feel culpable in my insanity because you are partly to blame. I'm not good, but you knew that. Why think less of me in here? You're so economic with your language and your time. I understand your frustration with me. You want to spare yourself any tax or energy, and I am acutely aware of my impulsivity. It might be all the same to you. And this is from I Know I'll Go. My father died at the Thunderbird Hotel on Flood Hope Road. According to documents, he was beaten over a prostitute or a cigarette. I prefer to tell people it was over a cigarette. I considered an Indian death myself while walking along the country roads of my reservation, before I really considered life. His death intruded, as I could not fathom being a good person when I came from such misery. I found newspaper clips about my father. Ken and 4 men abducted a girl. There aren't any details. There are documents about his murder and the transitional housing program he was in when he died. He was homeless, and social welfare gave him a hotel room next to prostitutes and younger, more violent men. There was nothing easy about his memory or what he left behind. He was an anomaly, a drunk savant. He took his colors, brushes, and stool when he left my mother. It was harvest, and the corn stalks were golden waving. I was constantly waiting outside on the porch. I ate blueberries and spit out anything too ripe, a purple liquid. I remember staring at my spit on the porch, wondering about waste and if I was hungry. His hair was black and coarse. He was wearing a baseball t-shirt and jeans covered in rust acrylic. As an Indian woman, I resist the urge to bleed out on a page to impart the story of my drunken father. It was dangerous to be alone with him, as it was dangerous to forgive, as it was dangerous to say he was a monster. If he were a monster, that would make me part monster, part Indian. It is my politic to write the humanity in my characters and subvert the stereotypes. Isn't that my duty as an Indian writer? But what part of him was subversion? And this is from Little Mountain Woman. I feel like a squaw, the type white people imagine a feral thing with greasy hair and nimble fingers wanting. My earliest memories and you and the baby have turned earth in my body. I don't know what I am anymore. You have made me feel sick of myself. I killed a ladybug when we were walking, and you looked at me like I was wild. I am the mother of your son. I don't think you know how poor I used to be, that my house was infested with ladybugs for so long. My brother and I went mad when they wouldn't stop biting. We tried to swat them with brooms and towels. We tried to corner them. Their death smelled like a puddle that wouldn't leave our home. My mother didn't come home when the bugs overtook the living room. She was working 3 days on and 3 days off, and between that, she was with Larry, my sister's father, who resurfaced in her life 20 years too late, just in time for my mother's midlife crisis. I don't think you know how poor that made me feel, a squaw child. I kill ladybugs whenever I see them. I know that the women you loved wouldn't do that. They consider the things lucky. So much of the world shames me. I never get to say the full thing with you, like the ladybugs. I don't think you know how I feel, that having the baby didn't make things better. Thank you.